Welcome to my channel Sci-Fi Love Story. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. The city of Tharian Prime sprawled across the jagged cliffs of the planet's northern hemisphere, its towers carved from black crystal that shimmered under the twin suns. Skies burned with gold and violet, and the air thrummed with the quiet hum of energy fields protecting the colony. For most Tharians, fear was a language as natural as breathing. Every creature, every building, every street corner seemed alive with it, vibrating with subtle signals that warned of danger. Yet for one human, fear was a foreign concept. Captain Elias Wren walked down the crystal promenade with a calm that bordered on arrogance, though his brown eyes betrayed nothing. He had arrived on Tharian Prime 2 weeks ago, the only survivor of the human colony ship Odyssey, which had crashed on the planet's hostile surface after navigating through an uncharted wormhole. All his crew had perished, and yet he moved as if the planet posed no threat. To the native Tharians, a species whose instincts were tuned to sense every tremor of danger, he was an anomaly, a living paradox. From atop the highest tower, Commander Vale observed him. Vale was a sentinel, trained since birth to read danger before it even manifested. The man, Vale thought, should have been trembling by now, overwhelmed by the deadly winds, the shifting cliffs, the predators that lurked in every shadow. But Elias did not even flinch. Vale descended to the promenade, blending seamlessly with the other citizens. His violet eyes narrowed as he followed the human, noting how creatures around him stiffened, recoiled, and shivered. Every Tharian in his presence seemed to betray fear instinctively, but not him. There was no tremor in his steps, no hesitation in his gaze. Elias paused to look at the market stalls lining the street, where strange, luminescent plants were sold alongside live creatures from distant moons. A merchant Tharian shrieked when a small predator slipped from its containment, yet Elias merely stepped back, adjusting his stance to give it room, unafraid. Vale was compelled to step closer, his curiosity now a sharper edge than his caution. "You are unusual," Vale said, his voice carrying the musical tone common to Tharians but laced with a questioning edge. Elias turned his gaze toward Vale, calm and steady. "That happens," he said simply. "I suppose humans are always unusual to someone." Vale frowned. Humans were known throughout the sector for their unpredictability, yes, but none had ever traversed Tharian Prime without leaving a trail of panic or hesitation. "You understand fear differently," Vale said, stepping into Elias' path. "Or perhaps you do not understand it at all." Elias shrugged. "Fear is useful sometimes, but it doesn't control me." The word struck Vale like a shard of ice. All Tharians knew fear was a master. It dictated every action, every reaction, every survival instinct. To face danger without fear was not just reckless, it was impossible. Yet here stood a human who defied that truth. Over the next several days, Vale watched Elias closely. The human walked through crowded streets, navigated volatile markets, and even passed near the cliffs where windstorms could rip a being from existence, all without a flicker of worry. Vale tried to provoke him subtly, orchestrating minor hazards, a toppled crate here, a screeching predator there. Each time, Elias adapted effortlessly, his actions precise and calm, never panicked, never faltering. The climax came unexpectedly. A massive scarn beast, long contained in the cliffs outside the city, broke free from its restraints. Its roar echoed across the city, shaking towers and sending citizens scattering in terror. Vale's own body tensed involuntarily, fear surging through him like a living wave. Elias, however, stepped forward into the chaos. The creature's eyes, glowing with predatory hunger, locked onto him, and yet he did not run. He observed it, calculated its movement, and sidestepped as it lunged. With a combination of human reflexes and sharp observation, he maneuvered around the creature, guiding it back toward containment using only his presence and calculated movements. Not a single citizen dared approach, and yet Elias subdued the monster without injury to it, to him, or to anyone else. Vale watched in stunned silence. Every Tharian in the city trembled, some fainted outright. But this human moved like water, a being untouched by the storm of fear that dominated everyone else. After the chaos subsided, Vale approached him cautiously. "How?" he asked, voice trembling despite himself. "How do you move without fear?" Elias looked at him simply. "I feel it, yes, I see danger, but I do not let it control me. I act in spite of it." The concept was alien. Vale had trained his entire life to sense fear, to use it to survive, to master it. But here was a creature who had mastered it without even realizing it. It was a revelation, one that threatened to upend everything he had known. In the days that followed, Elias' presence began to ripple through Tharian Prime. Where he walked, fear seemed less oppressive, and Vale noticed subtle changes. Citizens who had once cowered began taking calculated risks. Traders negotiated more boldly. Guards approached threats with steadier hands. The city itself, once a place of constant tension, seemed lighter. But not everyone welcomed him. The High Council of Tharian, guardians of tradition and the old ways, viewed humans with suspicion. They had seen other humans before, but none with such unshakable presence. Some feared that his methods would destabilize the colony, weaken the influence of fear, and open the way for chaos. Secretly, they plotted to remove him, not by force, but by the manipulation of his vulnerabilities, if any existed. Vale, torn between awe and loyalty, approached Elias one evening as the twin suns set behind the cliffs. "You are changing the city," he said quietly. "People look to you differently now. Not everyone approves." Elias smiled faintly. "Change isn't bad," he said. "It's how a species grows. Fear keeps you alive, yes, but it also traps you. I want to see what happens when people choose courage instead." Vale studied him, the weight of his duty pressing heavily on his shoulders. "You may be right," he said slowly. "But the Council, they will test you. They may even try to destroy you." Elias' expression did not waver. "Then I will meet their test. Fear does not make a being strong, choice does. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is action in spite of it." Vale felt a spark of hope he had not known in years. Perhaps this human was not just surviving on Tharian Prime, perhaps he was shaping its future. But as he spoke, a shadow moved across the cliffs behind them. Something ancient, predatory, and intelligent, watching from above. Vale did not recognize it immediately. But the feeling of dread it carried was profound. Elias, noticing his hesitation, glanced at the cliffs. "I see it," he said simply. "We'll deal with it when the time comes." Vale's heart pounded. Most Tharians would have fled at the presence of such a being, but Elias stood firm, calm, unflinching. And in that moment, Vale realized the truth. Humans were different, not because they were fearless, but because they could choose to face fear, to act where others froze, to see solutions where others saw only danger. The next morning, the city awoke to a new challenge. A fleet of unknown vessels appeared in Tharian's sky, ships built with sleek black alloys that reflected the twin suns like liquid shadow. Their arrival was silent, terrifying. Panic rippled through the citizens immediately. The High Council convened urgently, shouting orders, sending patrols into the streets. Elias, standing in the plaza, watched the sky with the same calm determination he had shown before. "They've come for a reason," he said to Vale, who had joined him. "And whatever it is, they will learn the same lesson every creature does when they face humans. Fear will not dictate the outcome." Vale nodded, though his pulse raced. He understood now that this human was not just extraordinary. He was a force that could reshape an entire civilization. But the question lingered. Were the people of Tharian ready to follow him? Or would the shadows from the sky bring chaos that even Elias could not control? The sun set on the black crystal towers, casting long, jagged shadows over the city. In the distance, the fleet's ships shimmered like onyx, silent and unmoving, waiting. And yet, for the first time in Tharian's history, there was someone standing among its citizens who did not fear them. someone who would change everything. The twin suns dipped behind the jagged cliffs of Tharian Prime, casting the black crystal towers into long, fractured shadows. From the plaza, Captain Elias Wren watched the sky. The fleet of unknown vessels hovered above the city like dark, silent predators. Each ship was sleek, angular, and massive. Their presence made every Tharian citizen quake with fear. Even Vale, trained for decades to sense danger, felt a tremor deep in his chest. But Elias stood calm. "They're waiting," he said quietly, almost to himself, "waiting for us to make a mistake." Vale looked at him in disbelief. "Mistake? Do you understand what these ships can do? They could level the city in an hour." Elias' brown eyes did not waver. "Then we'll make the first move. Fear isn't our weapon, choice is." Word of the fleet spread through Tharian Prime like wildfire. Citizens hid in homes, markets emptied, and the High Council convened in a storm of panic. Their ancient advisors whispered that these could be the Marauders of the Void, a legendary species said to conquer worlds with no warning, leaving nothing but ash and despair. Every instinct screamed that the humans must be contained, or killed, to prevent unknown consequences. Yet Elias did not hide. He stood in the plaza, hands relaxed at his sides, scanning the fleet as if they were nothing more than birds in the sky. Vale, torn between duty and awe, stayed close. "Why are you not afraid?" Vale asked again, his voice tight. Elias shrugged. "Because fear doesn't stop anything. Fear freezes, controls, blinds. I've learned to act instead, and right now, action is the only way forward." A sudden vibration shook the plaza. The lead ship of the fleet descended, massive thrusters humming, stirring the air into violent eddies. A projection appeared above the plaza, casting a holographic figure into the air, a being taller than any Tharian, cloaked in shifting darkness, its eyes glowing white. The voice came without sound, a telepathic message that filled the minds of everyone in the city. "Humans are here," it said. "They are dangerous. Leave the planet or be destroyed." Gasps spread through the crowd. Tharians fell to their knees, trembling. The council muttered frantic orders. Weapons were readied, but Elias did not move. Vale felt a wave of terror wash over him, a paralyzing fear unlike anything he had ever known. It was instinctual, a warning that survival was in danger. And yet, standing next to him, Elias' calm was like a shield. Vale realized then that humans were not fearless. They were deliberate. They measured risk, assessed danger, and acted with precision where others froze. Elias raised a hand, not in aggression but in recognition. "I don't want to fight," he said, his voice carrying across the plaza with surprising clarity. "We have no quarrel with you, but we will not run." The telepathic message pulsed again, this time with irritation. "Your species is a threat. Submit or perish." Elias turned to Vale. "We need to show them why humans are different. Fear won't stop them, but understanding might." Vale's mind raced. "Understanding, you want to talk to them." Elias smiled faintly. "Not talk, demonstrate. Humans survive because we act when others falter. That is the difference. Watch." He stepped forward into the open plaza, moving with perfect composure as the massive shadow of the lead ship grew closer. Citizens screamed, huddled, or fainted outright. The Marauder vessel loomed like a mountain above them, its presence crushing. Elias' first action was subtle. He began walking, deliberately slow, each step measured. As he moved, Vale watched in awe as the soldiers and citizens around him began to mimic his calm. Panic rippled outward like a wave, but Elias' resolve acted like a countercurrent, steadying those near him. The Marauder eyes on him, telepathic probes scanning for threat flashed. The human was unusual, unpredictable. There was no panic, no desperate plea for survival, no instinctual weakness. Only observation, calculation, and deliberate action. Then the Marauders made their first move. Energy beams shot toward the plaza, intended to incinerate anyone in range. Citizens screamed and scattered. Vale instinctively froze, every warning his body screamed screaming to flee. Elias did not run. He dropped to the ground, rolling to avoid the first beam, then leaped to safety with a fluidity that seemed impossible to Vale. As the beam struck the plaza, he used the environment, the black crystal towers, their reflective surfaces, to redirect the energy harmlessly away. Every action was precise, every movement calculated. Fear would have shattered him or anyone else, yet he moved as if he were conducting a dance, predicting danger before it even arrived. Vale realized then that this was more than courage. This was human ingenuity, the ability to observe, adapt, and respond, not blindly, but intelligently with purpose. The marauders paused, telepathically scanning again. The human was different. The threat wasn't brute force, it was that he didn't operate like a normal creature. He was unpredictable, yet precise, calculated, fearless in a way no being should have been. Elias took a step forward and raised his hands toward the ships, but instead of weapons he projected a simple signal, a burst of light and resonance. Not attack, but communication. Vale gasped, he's signaling them. Yes, Elias replied, calm as ever, but not in their language, in logic, in action. They will understand choice and intention because fear cannot define it. The marauder ships hesitated. Their probes scanned, twisted, and then retreated slightly. They were intelligent, not mindless. They recognized the anomaly, a creature that acted in spite of threat, that assessed danger and chose action rather than panic. They paused to study it. Elias seized the moment. He moved closer, standing tall as the lead vessel descended, casting shadows over the plaza. Citizens and soldiers alike froze, but Vale felt a strange shift. Seeing Elias act with purpose against the impossible odds ignited a spark of courage in everyone. Tharians who had cowered before began to rise, mimicking his calm. Soldiers readied weapons but did not fire impulsively. Even the council fell silent, watching. Then came the final test. A marauder emissary emerged from the vessel, a being of living shadow, its form shifting unnaturally, capable of striking with lethal precision. It leapt toward Elias, intending to kill. Vale gasped. He knew no Tharian could face it alive. But Elias did not flinch. He sidestepped the strike, grabbed a reflective shard from the plaza, and deflected the attack back toward the vessel. It recoiled, confused. Another strike came, and Elias used a combination of agility, observation, and improvisation, moving in ways no Tharian could anticipate, to create a gap between the emissary and the human crowd. Finally, the emissary stopped. It studied him. Then, surprisingly, it backed away. The marauder ships retreated, their telepathic warning gone. The citizens erupted in cautious cheers, though many were still shaken. Vale approached Elias, struggling to contain his awe. How did you do that?" Elias smiled, brushing dust from his uniform. "I didn't. Humans survive because we act in the face of fear. We choose. That choice makes all the difference. Fear doesn't stop us. Understanding, action, intelligence, those stop the impossible." Vale nodded slowly. He finally understood the truth he had suspected. Humans were extraordinary, not because they were stronger, faster, or larger, but because they could rise above instincts that enslaved every other being. They could face the unknown and act with purpose. In the days that followed, Tharian Prime changed. The Marauder fleet did not return. The citizens, inspired by Elias' calm courage, began to rebuild their confidence. Traders were bolder, soldiers more disciplined, and even the High Council slowly accepted that fear was not the only path to survival. Elias trained them not by fighting for them, but by showing them the value of decision, of acting with reason rather than instinct. Vale became his closest student, learning to measure fear without being controlled by it. Together, they began to transform the colony. Months passed. The human colony ship Odyssey's wreckage was salvaged. Survivors from distant worlds, hearing the stories of Elia's courage, arrived on Tharian Prime, inspired by his example. Humans, once rare and vulnerable in the galaxy, became symbols of resilience and ingenuity. One evening, as the twin suns set once more, Vale stood with Elias atop the highest tower. Below them, the city hummed with life and hope. "You've changed everything," Vale said. Elias looked out at the horizon. "No," he replied. "They changed themselves. I only showed them the choice they already had. Fear is natural, but courage is a decision." Vale smiled, understanding finally the essence of humans. Not invincible, not unafraid, but capable of choosing to rise above fear, to act when all others freeze, to see solutions where others see despair. In the galaxy of stars, full of threats, chaos, and terror, humans were not just survivors, they were beacons of hope. And Tharian Prime, once a city ruled by fear, now knew the truth. Sometimes the smallest species, the most ordinary, could teach an entire civilization how to face the impossible. Elias Wren turned to the stars. Somewhere out there, threats would come again. Marauders, predators, unknown forces beyond imagination. But he would meet them not with fear but with choice. For humanity, he knew, the impossible was just another challenge waiting to be understood and overcome. The twin suns disappeared below the horizon. The city glowed softly, black crystal towers reflecting light like a million tiny fires. And in that glow, a human stood unbowed, the embodiment of courage and choice. The galaxy would never forget. The end.